Like many of you, I was surprised by the announcement of Assetto Corsa Rally at the Sim Racing Expo this last month, but also pretty excited. The rally sim scene has been in a weird spot for a really long time, with a 20-year-old game from a now defunct studio still being the gold standard for rally sims. Of course, I'm talking about Richard Burns' Rally. Dirt Rally 1 and 2 certainly made some waves, and especially once DR2 became more affordable with all its paid DLC, it was more or less the modern go-to. It does feel really fun, I love DR2, but WRC, its sorta spiritual successor with Codemasters under EA getting the WRC license, well, that just didn't hit the mark. The swap to Unreal Engine did not pan out, and the game didn't gain the traction it needed. Pun intended. So along comes AC Rally out of the blue, a hardcore rally sim developed by a new team, Supernova Games, with the blessing and support of Kunos. And admittedly, one of my first thoughts was, another AC game? I mean, we now have AC1, the modding platform that's still popular today. We have ACC, the GT racing online focused game. Then AC Evo, seemingly the new main series game with an open world career mode aspect. And now a rally game too? After that initial reveal, I was thinking like, couldn't rally just fit into Evo or something? Why make a fourth game instead of just tacking this onto your existing early access project? But now that I've spent some proper time playing AC Rally, I get it. The level of detail present in this game deserves its own game, not to just be shoehorned into something else. This is a wonderfully focused experience that wants to deliver the new gold standard for rally sims, and it might just get there. So let's start with my impressions on the handling and force feedback. But first, this video is sponsored by Thrustmaster and their new T248R. I tested AC Rally with a handful of wheels, but have spent most of my time with the T248R and have been having a lovely time with it. This is an all-in-one setup for PC and PlayStation that comes with a 3.1 Nm hybrid drive wheelbase with multiple levels of boost that provides a great level of detail and response with great cooling that keeps the wheel going strong for long play sessions while you're trying your absolute best to wrangle that Lancia 037. There's an LCD display for showing vehicle info or adjusting settings on the fly, as well as lights for shifting, race flags, and even pit limiter. The wheel's got a great array of inputs with a familiar controller style layout, and you get 3 Hall effect pedals with an included spring adjustment for setting your desired brake resistance. From now until November 30th, you can get this wheel for 5% off by following this link and using my creator code HOKIHOSHI. So if you're looking to take that next step into sim racing over the holiday season with all these awesome new games coming out, now is a great time to pick up the T248R. And with that, let's dive into AC Rally's handling. I think they've got a phenomenal foundation, but it does have some early access quirks and some areas could be dialed in. The suspension, body roll, and momentum of the cars is fantastic. Watching these cars squat and rebound and absorb bumps is just so satisfying. It looks and feels extremely natural. I think the steering from a physics standpoint also feels very good. You're able to pitch the cars in to set their angle. The front end is very reactive, which feels great. The balance of over and understeer while on and off throttle also feels really nice. The way it handles grip and momentum while you manage steering and pedal input is just so precise. You really get a sense that you are driving these cars. You're very connected to the physics of the vehicle. On the flip side, I think the braking needs work. For one, you can just be on full brakes and the car will still roll forward or back. I'm sure that's just an early access quirk that'll get worked out in due time, but still an issue with the current version. This also highlights a weird situation with the engines where you can be in gear with your foot on the brake and the engine will still be running at like impossibly low RPMs. Again though, just a quirk of early access, I'm not too worried about it. I do feel like braking pressure and effectiveness and how and when you lock up all needs some tweaking though. Especially on pavement, the braking in some cars at lower speeds feels less effective than it should. I also noticed that pulling the handbrake automatically engages the clutch, and I don't think I have any setting on that's causing this. It's fine if this is an option, but I want to have control over the clutch when I'm engaging the handbrake, especially because if you're not careful, it kind of ends up shocking the rear end when you release the brake and the clutch re-engages. So you gotta be gentle with it. Finally, I do think lateral grip could be a adjusted on gravel. You just don't scrub as much speed as I would expect. This is definitely a hot topic surrounding the game right now, with some people feeling like they're driving on ice and others saying, no, it's a skill issue, it's just more realistic than other games. And I think the answer lies, as it often does, somewhere in the middle. I did jump into WRC, DR2, and RBR to see how gravel feels in those, and they all certainly feel much grippier. You really feel like the suspension and tires are holding you down to that surface. The gravel almost cushions you and tries to keep the car straight, but perhaps a bit too much. And I do think the more tame sense of speed in AC Rally is giving people a false sense of confidence throwing it into corners. I say this with no assumed authority, but just to lay out my bias and experience level, I used to be a big Subaru guy and have logged many hundreds of miles of spirited driving on winding gravel and snow-covered roads, so I feel like I have a decent pulse on what gravel feels like, but obviously, it's not a uniform surface, it can differ quite a lot, and I've never driven a proper pro-level rally car in these locations. So again, in no way am I an expert, I'm not trying to claim authority here, I just want to throw in my opinion as another data point in the discussion of how realistic the grip level is on gravel. Alright, now finally to speak on force feedback. I think this needs some more time to mature. Some effects feel very nice, the overall road surface feeling is good, but there is a distinct lack of feedback when it comes to the steering rack. Like, there's no caster feeling. It's very light and loose when it comes to the slower, more constant effects from the rack self-centering. This makes it harder to control countersteer and precisely place the car on the road. I feel like I have to be more active with the wheel when, in reality, the steering rack should be doing more of the work for me. Like, it's that mentality of steering with your feet. You shouldn't have to be that active with the wheel. I've seen a lot of people turning up the overall feedback level pretty high. I've had to do that as well on every wheel I tested, all the way up to the higher spec direct drives, and also had to add some damping in the wheel software itself to get the feedback closer to where I'm comfortable, but I do hope we still see some improvements on the game side. Alright, now that's enough yapping about the handling stuff, let's talk about the rest of the game. AC Rally is gorgeous. The lighting is natural, the foliage looks great, stages are well detailed, it's a very pretty game, and it runs pretty well too. This is UE5, but I've experienced very minimal stuttering and can hit a pretty comfortable 60 FPS on my 5120x1440 monitor with mostly high settings and no DLSS or FrameGen. There is some visual noise and temporal crap consistent with UE5 games and TAA that's noticeable in the tire rotation or gravel kicking up, sometimes when foliage is panning across the scene, but overall the image is pretty clear and stable. It also sounds lovely. It seems like they've got a great system for how audio bounces off the environment and changes when you're in or outside of the car, or is changed by the Doppler effect from stationary replay cameras. Cars feel punchy and dynamic, not synthetic at all. The way revs climb and fall slightly when the car is unloading and then loading back up over bumps is so satisfying to listen to. It just sells the whole experience. But what really started selling me on this game are all the little details in its presentation that players won't notice right away. For example, this interior GoPro POV reveals so much that you wouldn't ever see during normal gameplay. Your co-driver's pace notes are actually lip-synced. When he's giving call-outs, his face is animated and his mouth is moving appropriately. They didn't need to do that, but they did. Now look at the driver, how he turns his head and his eyes to look into corners. He's not a stiff stick man pointing straight forward, he's so well animated. They have some good system in place here so that his eyes and head track the direction of movement or look towards apexes or something. I'm not actually sure how they do it because it's not just a simple canned animation that's attached to the steering position. When you're counter steering, he's still looking ahead into the next corner how a real person would. Maybe there's a simple trick here, but the result is very impressive. And then you can of course zoom out to just watch the driver and co-driver's whole bodies animate as they react to bumps and jumps and G-forces in the car. The whole scene here is so well detailed, and again, sells the experience. It's done so well that you almost don't realize it's doing anything at all because it just looks natural. Another detail I picked up on when watching the replays is how the draft or the wake of air behind your car actually affects the foliage. Look at this scene where the car flies by and then the wind rolls over the grass right behind it. I've never seen this in another game, and that's again just one of those things that obviously happens in real life. We don't really think about it, but it's something most games would never bother to add in. There are so many little touches of passion in AC Rally that sell me on the fact that Supernova is really giving it their all here. They want to create the most immersive and realistic rally sim in every sense of the word, and I'm starting to believe they could pull it off. Now, while I do have some smaller concerns with physics and force feedback, I feel fairly comfortable that those will get ironed out by launch. The game's already in a place where it feels fun, looks and sounds great, and runs pretty well. My main concern for AC Rally is content. I've heard that they're planning to launch with about 120 kilometers of road across about 10 special stages in 5 countries. Now, they are laser scanning these stages, which I think is a first for rally games, unless you want to include like TXR Drift way back in the day, but obviously a lot of work is going into accurately recreating these locations, and it does show. Like I said, they're very well detailed. However, the end result is still a fairly low amount of content, and I know this is comparing a brand new game against games with years or even decades of post-launch support, but speaking purely from a consumer perspective, comparing ACR at launch against something like DR2, RBR, or even WRC, all of those games have significantly more content. I mean, RBR has like 400 stages included in the current Rally Sim Fans mod pack. It's insane. So while I'm confident in the foundation of AC Rally, I think it might need more time to flesh out its roster of available content and features. We also don't really know about a career mode or progression system or how multiplayer is going to work. There's a lot of features still up in the air. I know they've said there will be a rally school, and I always love when games include stuff like that, but I want to see what the gameplay loop is, if there will be one, or if they're just leaning more into an open sandbox platform instead of a game with any sense of progression. And at the end of the day, I am sold on the experience that Assetto Corsa Rally is aiming to deliver. This is going to be the new gold standard when it comes to rally realism, but I still want to see it succeed as a video game, as an entertainment product with enough content and features to keep people engaged for a long time. Thanks for watching, folks. Let me know how you all have been enjoying AC Rally if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video.